independence hurdles. Should May go to the palace tomorrow, or should she be delayed for fear of inflaming Nicola Sturgeon and the Scottish nationalists? And my first caller is, just to prove how international we are on this show, my first caller is Matthew in Costa Rica. Matthew, good evening.
Hello, Nigel.
So, what should happen, Matthew?
Well, I don't know what should happen, but I've got a question for you. This has been a mystery for me for the best part of the last year. It's about Nicola Sturgeon. I'm not expecting you to understand how her mind works. But obviously, you know, her referendum is based on us leaving the EU. She's fanatic about her lifelong dream of Scottish independence, and clearly she puts Scottish interests above British interests, otherwise she wouldn't be calling for this referendum today. So my question is, why does she keep popping up to frustrate the process? If her premise of the referendum is on us leaving, why doesn't she just let us get on with it, and then she can say, aha, you see, we're now coming out of Europe, now we need the referendum. Why is she trying to slow things down?
Well, is she serving Scotland's interests in her mind, or the European Union's interests? Because the one thing, Matthew, to really get a handle on here is, yes, she talks about Scotland a lot, and if you're called the SNP, I guess you have to. But she also eulogises about the European project. She thinks it's an absolutely wonderful thing for the Scottish economy. And I wonder, I wonder, Matthew, whether she has a higher loyalty to the European Union than she does to Scotland. Because after all, what she's saying is that she wants Scotland to leave the United Kingdom but be part of the European Union with its laws made somewhere else, its borders decided somewhere else, its fish shared with the rest of Europe. So Matthew, I'm a little bit curious too. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, well, I think she's certainly in a competition with Angela Merkel as to who can smile the least in Europe.
No, Matthew, believe me, I've met both of them. I've obviously done debates with Nicola Sturgeon, but I once had lunch with Angela Merkel. I sat opposite her, and I have to say that she looked even more miserable in private than she appears in public. It could have been my presence. Maybe if I hadn't been there, it would have been different, but gosh, she does take life seriously.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, as I say, if their loyalty lies with the EU, let us get on with it. Maybe they can apply for European membership, but I think when the prospects of that become more of a reality, the Scots will wake up and realise that they don't want to get the EU, the euro, which apparently is a new requirement. And all the rest of it.
The euro, open borders. And do you know what, Matthew? I'm absolutely convinced, post-Brexit, that if Scotland applied to join the European Union, the Spanish would say, whoa, hang on a second. You know, if we allow Scotland to do this, we'll have the same problem with Catalonia. Matthew, tell me, what do you do in Costa Rica to earn a living?
I'm a translator, actually. So I'm a fellow Europhile like yourself.
Right.
Translate French, Italian, and Spanish. So I like to follow the rest of it, what's going on. But no, I think that this year, when everything starts to unravel with the EU, the prospect of Scotland joining is going to become more and more remote, and they're going to want to stick with us.
I think you're absolutely right, Matthew, and I thank you for your long-distance call. Harry in Portsmouth, good evening. What should the Prime Minister do, Harry? Should she crack on?
Crack on. It's this game of chess that's being played out. The public, the voter, can only sit back and learn hard lessons at how deceitful politicians can be. I've watched them for 40 years. I remember the first referendum, even though I couldn't vote in it. Yeah. And the deceit and lies that we've had from those who want us to stay in and those who want to get Scotland out of the UK is a valuable learning lesson for all.
Are you feeling frustrated, Harry?
Yes, nearly as frustrated as what you probably are.
Yeah, well, I'm certainly very frustrated because I keep hearing these speeches from Theresa May, and they're terrific. You know, they're almost Churchillian about what we're going to do and the advantages of Brexit and how she's a convert to the cause, and it all sounds wonderful. And then what happens, Harry? Nothing. Yeah. And it's been 9 months. You know, and I cannot see, Harry, for the life of me, what she's scared about with Nicola Sturgeon and a second Scottish referendum. I just don't get it.
Can I ask you a question? Will you be staying on at LBC? You said you'd wait until the trigger. I think we need you more than ever, actually, because it's going to be a long haul.
It's going to be a long haul, Harry. Will I stay at LBC? That depends whether they sack me, whether Ofcom complain about me. I hope they don't. Harry, we'll see. All I can say is I'm enjoying doing this at LBC. I do think that talk radio and debate, is really important. But, Harry, if you want to help my case, write to the LBC bosses and say I'm not that awful after all. Harry, I thank you for your call. I'm going to ask James in Birmingham, should we delay everything because of Nicola Sturgeon and a second Scottish referendum?
No. Why should we?
Well, I rather agree. But why is she? That's the question.
Right. If Nicola Sturgeon, right, wanted to stay in the EU, right, she would have voted, the country, Scotland, would have voted to leave. They would have voted no, right? They would have tried to get back with the EU in the first place. But they didn't. They voted no. So therefore, this stays a union. We all voted to leave together.
Yep.
Right? So what the SNP are saying, we're going to lose a single market. It's like, no, we're not going to lose a single market at all, right? We just want out of the single market. You would have lost the single market in the first place. You would have adopted the euro. You would have lost out more than what you are now.
So, James, should the Prime Minister just stand strong and say we voted as a country, end of?
We should, right, we voted to leave as a union. Whether Scotland, I know a good proportion of Scots voted to remain. Fair enough. But the rest of the country voted to leave. We should have voted. We should. I'm sorry, but England, Wales, proportionally voted to. We all voted to leave. I'm sorry,
James. I get it. I get it.
You win some, you lose some.
I get your point, James. Very simple, very clear. I thank you for your call. Right now, you're listening to the Nigel Farage. I'm in Strasbourg this evening, where still there are MEPs and officials in denial. Despite the referendum, many of them thought, no, it'll never happen. The Brits will never trigger Article 50. They thought our friends in Westminster, in the Commons and the Lords, will stop it from happening. And, of course, in the past, we've seen the Danes be made to vote again, and we've seen the Irish made to vote again, and we've seen the French and Dutch ignored, and they literally simply don't think it was ever going to happen. And I was hoping tomorrow at midday to walk into that chamber, head held high, with Theresa May having been to the palace and written to the EU saying we're triggering Article 50. But up pops Nicola Sturgeon and the SNP saying they're going to have a second referendum because they don't want to leave. She doesn't want to leave the European Union. She doesn't want to leave the single market. She is a Euro fanatic. And a question that never seems to be asked is, why is that party called the Scottish National Party? She doesn't want Scotland to be a nation, an independent nation. She does not want independence from this referendum at all. She wants to be part of a Europe that is rapidly becoming a United States of Europe. And I simply can't understand how this word independence can be used by Sturgeon. How is it independent to share your fish with the rest of Europe? How is it independent to have virtually all of your laws made somewhere else? How is it independent to have your own courts overruled? How is it independent to have to sign up to join the euro? How does any of this work? How does she get away with it? Now, if you're a Scottish nationalist listening to this show, please let me know what you think. Tell me that it's consistent to talk about independence and to be part of the European Union. I tell you what, if you can convince me of that, then I'll take you out for the best dinner you've ever had, because I think it's literally impossible. Your texts and tweets coming in. If the SNP wants to leave the UK, then sod off. Oh, I'll just about get away with that. I don't want to be held back with the Scots, who number less than the population of London, says Russell. Well, actually, I think their population is smaller than the region of Yorkshire and the Humber too. As a Scot for whom Sturgeon does not speak, Mrs May should have the guts to ignore that divisive woman and trigger Article 50. Hello, Nigel. The problem is that even when Sturgeon is proven wrong, she will always be a parasite to the taxpayer. She should be taken off the payroll forever, says Ray. Bit of English nationalism, I think, coming out in response there. Good evening, Nigel. Mrs. Sturgeon is a disgrace. She is the nastiest politician, along with Salmond. Scotland will regret this, says Elizabeth from Clacton. So some quite strong condemnation of Nicola Sturgeon. But don't forget, she has been massively successful. Certainly, that general election result for the SNP was quite something. So, she's not stupid. She was riding a wave. I just think that a second referendum in Scotland actually would split the Scottish National Party, because I think their own members and supporters would begin to recognise that actually she wants to sign them up for a United States of Europe. That's what I think. What does Barbara in Edinburgh think? Barbara, good evening.
Oh, good evening, Nigel. Hello.
Hello there. Yes, so what should happen now, Barbara?
Well, I live in Scotland. I've lived here over 60 years, but I'm English. So, of course, you can't tell by my accent. So often I hear people speaking about the English.
Yes.
So I don't think she wants independence. I think they want to be away from England. I've always believed that. I think they want to be independent of England.
Do you know, Barbara, I mean, I've visited Scotland a lot in my life.
Oh, I remember that terrible visit when those thugs...
Oh, yes. I mean, I've seen...
That was awful.
I've seen Scottish nationalism face to face, and do you know what? It was pretty ugly. It was thuggish. It was brutish. I guess you could almost call it racist against the English.
It is racist.
I mean, if any of my supporters, Barbara...
The SNP, the majority of the supporters don't like the English, and that's the agenda.
Is it just as simple as that?
I think so, and I've lived here over 60 years.
Has Scotland become a less pleasant place to live as the SNP have surged?
Well, I'll be honest with you, I'm thinking of moving back to England. I mean, I was 5 when I left, and I'm thinking of moving back.
Right. But you have at least got the accent. You have at least got the accent as cover, haven't you?
And, we've managed to get on okay here, but I still feel it's got worse now with this anti-English feeling, because often things are said in my company, not realising that I'm an English person. Yeah. And I don't like it at all. And I think that, the business with these Alex Salmond and Sturgeon also, it's like a big fish in a small pond. I think there's a lot of that.
Barbara, a quick prediction, Barbara. If this does come to a second referendum, will the result be the same as last time?
I think so. Yes. I believe that.
Yeah, I do too.
I've been right about them all. I was right about Brexit. I was right about the Indy Ref. I was right about the general election 2015.
Wow.
Quite good at reading things. I think.
Did you get Leicester City right for the Premier League as well?
Yes. I think there are an element of Scots Nats who don't want to be in Europe. You know that. Yes.
Oh no, Barbara, I think
independent people. They want independence for Scotland, possibly not anti-English as such.
I think, Barbara, a second referendum may well actually split the SNP, because there will be genuine Scottish nationalists in that party. I thank you very much for your insight from north of the border. What does Judith in Yeovil think? Judith, are you frustrated with the Prime Minister, or is she right to delay because of Nicola Sturgeon?
No, she's not right to delay because of Nicola Sturgeon, but I don't agree with you when you say Sturgeon is driven by this EU ideology or fanaticism. I agree with Barbara. She's driven by a political ideology that hates the English and England. Scotland has lived off the English teat for years. They are incapable of managing as a truly independent country. And now she's looking for another teat to latch onto, and that is the EU. And
But Judith, why would you hate? I mean, if you're right, and if the English are big contributors financially to Scotland, and there are certainly some figures that would back that up, if all of that's true, why would you hate the person that feeds you?
It's a psychological thing. You always do, don't you?
I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure.
She is driven by a hatred of England and the English. And what I would like to see, if there is another referendum on the State of the Union, that we all get a vote in it. Why is only the Scots allowed to vote in the future of the Union? It's outrageous. And quite frankly, I'd be voting for them to go. He could
Judith,
clear
I
off,
have
at
to
least
say,
he wouldn't be costing me any more money.
I have to say, Judith, that 20 years ago, I've hardly ever heard English people say derogatory things about the Scots. I hardly ever heard it. In jest, perhaps, at, the rugby or the football or whatever it might be. But I sense, Judith, there are now a lot of English people who are really, really upset and angry at the sheer level of ungratefulness and abuse that we appear to get from some Scottish politicians. It's a union, and it should work both ways. Judith, at some point in the next weeks and months, we will have a debate on should the whole of the United Kingdom have a referendum on Scotland. Not for now, but I thank you for your points, and I have to say I think there is some validity in them. Your texts and tweets, delay, delay, delay. If Theresa May is showing this level of weakness already, what will she be like when it comes to the EU negotiations, says James. I don't know. I have to say, I wonder whether Thomas in Worthing. Thomas, is Theresa May going to be strong, give us leadership? Is she sensible to back off, given what Sturgeon has said?
Good evening. I think that the Tories are weak at the moment. I know that they're getting a lot of praise for the things that they say, but what they say and what they do tend to be completely different, and they're already backing down in multiple areas. But what I was actually going to, just a few points. Firstly, a third of SNP members voted for Brexit. Let's not forget that for a second.
Yes, yep.
And the second thing is, Nicola Sturgeon and the SNP are already acting like they're an independent country. They're coming out, they're dictating terms, they're saying what must be done for them to stay in. They had the vote, for better or worse, to stay in the UK, regardless of the referendum, the EU referendum, as far as I'm concerned. UK weren't part of the EU before, they had their, 1940s. So what's changed? I don't think there is an argument for independence. I mean, you look at the oil prices, they're at a 3-year low at the moment. It's utterly incredible. They've got no argument.
So is really what you're saying, Thomas, that unless the Prime Minister dictates events will be dictated to her, and that is in effect what is happening today with Nicola Sturgeon?
Well, I've seen Theresa May being compared to the likes of Margaret Thatcher and Winston Churchill. I don't see it personally. I think her history, especially previous, isn't that of somebody that follows through with their claims. She hasn't got a track record, especially with immigration, of actually doing as she said she would do. What I think you've got on one side of the UK border is a politician who's pretty, I might do this, I might not do this, I'm not necessarily going to do it, very flip-floppy. And north of the border, you've got Nicola Sturgeon seeing her approval ratings dropping out. It has to be
doing what
Tories are getting more popular in Scotland. I don't personally like them myself, but they are.
Thomas, you've made the point well. The Prime Minister needs to get a grip on events. You're absolutely right. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show. Big evening in Westminster, Article 50, about to pass the final hurdle. The Prime Minister can go and trigger it, go and see the Queen tomorrow, right to the European Union, but she's being held back because Nicola Sturgeon says she wants a second Scottish referendum, and that seems to have flummoxed Number 10, and so we're back to delay. That's after 9 months of delays already since the referendum. To get involved with this debate, should the Prime Minister just go, or should she perhaps be scared of the SNP? You can call me on 0345 60 60 973. You can text 84850, and you can watch us on LBC's Facebook page right now. But before I come back to May v Sturgeon, just a couple of bits of news. Mrs Merkel, who was mentioned earlier on in the show, was due to go to Washington to meet Donald Trump tomorrow. Gosh, I'd love to be a fly on the wall for that meeting, but that visit's been cancelled because of snow. So I'm guessing Mrs Merkel in some ways will be quite relieved, because Trump has been pretty critical of the way the Germans dominate the European Union and particularly the euro currency. And remember, this Wednesday there is the first big European general election of the year. It's taking place in the Netherlands. It's happening against the backdrop of riots on the streets as the diplomatic row between Turkey and the Netherlands descends to the most extraordinary level, with abuse being thrown in both directions, and speculation that Geert Wilders, who has some pretty hard-line views on Islam and many other things, you know, it's kind of neck and neck as to whether he is actually going to win those elections this Wednesday. And I would have thought, having seen sort of Turkish protests and riots on the streets of Rotterdam over the course of the weekend, he must have a chance of doing that. So it's a big week everywhere. And I was hoping for a really mega week in British politics with Article 50 being triggered. Now I'm told it might not happen because we have to be scared of Nicola Sturgeon and the SNP, which I think is utter nonsense. But I wonder what Andre in Hanger Lane thinks.
Hi, Nigel. Great talking to you.
Good evening.
I've been waiting for a long time to talk to you. I'm a Romanian, and first of all, I want to tell you that I would like Theresa May to just trigger the article already, because I feel us Europeans have been used, not just us, all Europeans, have been used as a trading currency for, for negotiations.
Yes.
Which isn't correct. We haven't signed up for this. We're paying taxes. We're correct here. We're not doing anything illegal, so it's not fair for us to be kept, moved around and used in all interviews as a currency. So that's one of the reasons I would like it to get over and done with.
Well, Andre, can I say, can I just say on that point that I absolutely agree with you. I mean, I do think that we've let far too many people into the country over the last 15 years, not just from the EU, from other parts of the world too. But, you came here legally. It would be outrageous for a British government to try and change that retrospectively. And I, at no point, did I want people like you, Andre, to be bargaining chips for us to take to the table in Brussels. I've always felt that we should rise way, way above that. So hopefully, if there is any doubt there, Andre, in the minds of people like you, that can be settled very quickly.
That was actually my question to you. Do you think that after I've been here for 7 years, both me and my wife, we have a house here, do you think we should receive residency and to be allowed to have a proper British passport after so many years? Because it's ridiculous. We can't. I don't know if you've seen this residency form. It's a joke. And I think we should be allowed to have a proper residency.
Yes, I think people that have been in the country for a period of time, have paid their taxes, obeyed the law, should of course be able to apply for residency. And I'm sure, Andre, that will happen to you in good time. The problem is, it was the sheer irresponsibility of having the open door from 2004 that just led to a government that simply, or governments that simply had no idea how many folk were going to come. And hopefully with Brexit, we'll get it on a more controlled basis. And we'll also, not close ourselves off to many other parts of the world's workers because we have the open door to the EU. So, Andre, I hope this is going to be fairer to people who want to come to Britain from all over the world, and in particular to you. And I thank you very much indeed for your call. Matthew in Norwich, do you think the Prime Minister is shilly-shallying? Should she just get on with it?
Yes, I definitely think she's definitely dilly-dallying about with all this. I think that the referendum, after that, she should have just essentially invoked Article 50 on the spot. And look what's happened over these last 9 months. We've had legal challenges. We've had to go to the normal court, the Supreme Court. And now we've got this issue with Nicola Sturgeon, where she's trying to call for a second independence referendum, which my real question really was, what makes her think she has the authority to do that? Because she technically still belongs as part of Great Britain.
Yes, I mean, Matthew, you're right. And she can't do this on her own. She does need the support of the British government. I have to say, I'm now at a level with this, personally, where I think we should effectively call her bluff. Say, right, OK, go on then, have your referendum, because I'm convinced, Matthew, that Sturgeon and the SNP would lose this referendum by a much bigger margin than the first one. And perhaps if we do that, we won't be plagued with Scottish nationalism for years to come. I mean, that's my view. I mean, what do you think?
Well, I've always been a believer that if people want independence, they should have it. But at the same time, they need to think about how much of an impact is it going to have on their economy, what's it going to do for jobs, that kind of stuff. Because
But Matthew, she's not selling independence. She's using the word independence, telling the Scottish people they can be independent and proud, but what she wants to do is to sign them up to the European club. It's totally dishonest, isn't it?
yes, it's completely dishonest if you ask me. But I essentially, she's just using this as a delay tactic. And if she wants to leave just to sign them up to the European Union, she can go ahead. But don't be surprised, though, if she ends up not only losing the referendum, but essentially losing her position in her own party. Her party may end up becoming unelectable, quite frankly.
You know, Mr. Cameron called a referendum, had to resign over it. This could well be something, as I've said earlier on this show, that splits the SNP, because many of their own supporters actually thought Brexit was quite a good idea. It may well expose the double standards and hypocrisy in using the word independence, and it could, you're quite right, with the end of Sturgeon 2. Matthew, I thank you for your call. Your texts and tweets flooding in here. If Scotland joins the EU, Scotland will be flooded by unskilled, poor EU immigrants, and Scotland will lose its character. Well, certainly, if Britain has not got an open door to unskilled migrants, and Scotland has, that would be very interesting. If Scotland leaves the Union, what will their divorce bill be, says Ray in Sittingbourne. Well, that's an interesting one. I'm loving the Brexit fiasco. The wheat from the chaff exposed. We need a major reform of the House of Lords, says Sharpler in Eastham. Reform of the House of Lords. I think abolition actually is more on my books, but there we are. Hi, I'm a British wife from Lithuania. Kids are British. Where does that leave my family, Nigel? Cheers, Chris. I think I've explained that already to our previous Romanian caller. You all came here legally. You shouldn't, in my view, be bargaining chips. Now, I'm going to ask Adam in Burton-on-Trent what he thinks. Should the Prime Minister just go to the palace tomorrow and trigger Article 50?
Good evening, Nigel. Yeah, I think she should, actually. I mean, I think for Nicola Sturgeon to cause all of this havoc right at the point of us triggering Article 50 just shows the utter selfishness of the woman. You know, it feels as if she's literally just trying to jeopardise the Brexit process at the moment.
Yes.
I think that
she's not alone, Adam, is she? There are many others. Tony Blair, Lord Heseltine. I mean, there are many others that would like to do the same.
Yeah, but you know how she's going about it is, and you know, she's one of the people at the moment who've got a massive impact because she's currently in politics, etc. But you know, I think that basically what needs to happen is if we give her this second referendum and she loses, which I'm sure she does, I think we should put some clauses in there that says, you know, once you lose, that's it. You need to stand down now, similar to like what David Cameron did. And I think that what it shows is that Scotland is crying out for some form of other political party that puts Scottish interests first, but it's not solely.
I know. I think you're right, Adam. And actually, Adam, surely the Prime Minister does one of two things. Either she says, we voted as a united kingdom, please go away, we're not going to support you having a referendum. Or she says, I tell you what, go and do it, knowing that they would lose by a bigger margin. But for Nicola Sturgeon to call a press conference that effectively delays yet further us triggering Article 50, frankly, is driving me bonkers. Right now, you're listening to the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively here on... Those of us that wanted Theresa May to go to Buckingham Palace tomorrow and trigger Article 50 with the European Union are told we're going to have to wait. We're not sure how long, perhaps not too long, but wait, because Nicola Sturgeon has called for a second Scottish referendum and the SNP have their conference coming up this weekend. And a text here that I think sums up really exactly how I feel about all of this. Are the Scottish government stupid? How can you square the nonsense of independence from England and crave the shackles of Brussels? There would be even less independence, says Dave Howard. Well, Dave, I have to say, I completely agree with that. I do not know. I cannot understand why they've not been rumbled in Scotland for using the word independence when they don't actually mean it. I wonder what Nicholas in Kilmartin makes of that.
Nigel, pleasure to speak to you again. I totally agree with all your callers. I totally agree. I think Theresa May should get on her best clothes tomorrow and get straight to Buckingham Palace.
What, put on the posh frock, yeah?
Yeah, straight to Buckingham Palace. I'm going to trigger Article 50 by midday today. And Nicola Sturgeon is a small fish in a huge pond. I don't know who this woman thinks she is.
Nicholas, whoever she thinks she is, the fact is that Westminster and London are scared of her, aren't they?
Yeah, but why?
I don't know. You live in Scotland, you tell me. You don't know either.
I can't answer that question. Do you know your previous callers? They're anti-English. They're the most racist party that we've got. I have called you before, and they've called me a xenophobe and a racist, etc. They're the most racist party I've ever came across.
Yes.
They can't stand the English. You know, I can't understand why she wants to take from Westminster to give it to Brussels. My granddad and my great-granddad, who fought in both wars, would be turning in their grave.
Well, Nicholas,
Great Britain.
I have to say, Nicholas, I agree with all of that. But if anyone's listening who was a Sturgeon supporter, a Scotland activist, please call me, text me, tweet me, and explain to me that these callers who say that there are racist tendencies amongst SNP supporters are wrong. So you've got your chance. You've got 10 minutes to redress that balance. Nicholas, thank you. Maureen in Dartford. Maureen, is the last caller right? Should Theresa May put her best dress on and go to the palace tomorrow and ignore the SNP?
Absolutely not. And I don't think that she's not going to the palace tomorrow. It's nothing to do with what the SNP did. All right, it was a shock because she was very clever. And she, while all heads are turned because they're going into Parliament and they're voting and doing everything, and she shot one across the bows. But I think Theresa May's got her own agenda, and I don't think it helps by locking these two things together. And of course, Westminster are upset about what happens because if Nicola Sturgeon stir in the pot, we put in Article 50. That's going to make people jittery. If Scotland's playing up, that's going to make people even more jittery. And I think it could complicate matters as regards the value of the pound, etc. But I don't think that she's bothered about the referendum that Scotland want to have because Scotland would never vote to leave us.
No. Well, I don't think they would either, Maureen. I think with the oil price,
I must say that I was, listening to your programme, which I listen to every evening, and it was getting to the point where the inference was that we were not going to go to Buckingham Palace tomorrow purely because Nicola Sturgeon has thrown a little wobbler.
Yeah, I think that's right.
That isn't the case, and I think that she should be allowed to stick to her own agenda with all this hypothesis. And I'm very, very glad today that we're going to get through the votes. All the I's, the T's are crossed and all the I's are dotted. And we're actually going to make it.
Well,
but
Maureen,
let's not put too many flies in the oil.
Maureen, let me tell you why, Maureen, assuming this happens tonight, and it looks 99% certain that it will. Let me tell you why, Maureen, triggering Article 50 quickly matters. Firstly, it would show at last some decisiveness on this, because goodness me, we've had to wait an awfully long time, right? But secondly, if we trigger Article 50 by Wednesday, we then get this onto the agenda for the next big European summit on the 6th of April, when the 28 bosses from all the European countries will be sitting in the room, and at that moment, we can actually begin serious negotiations. If we miss that deadline, it means we won't get a chance to talk to all the other bosses until another month later. And Maureen, I'm just making an argument that says it's 9 months since we voted for Brexit. Can we please, please, please get on with it?
But the point that you've just made there is a very good point.
Yep.
That, if we trigger it at a certain time, we get a certain benefit. But what you're inferring is that we're not triggering it because of something Nicola Sturgeon's done. And no one cares about what Nicola Sturgeon does. She's just going to, drag her country into rack and ruin.
Well,
and they will never leave us.
I think, Maureen, with respect, I think that, the best laid plans and all that, and I think Downing Street, from the sounds of it, from the looks of it, were a bit rocked back on their heels today, didn't know how to deal with this. And I hope overnight, Maureen, that you prove to be right and that they change their mind and that we get the live shots at 10 to 11 as the car leaves Downing Street and heads off for the palace. Maureen, I hope you're absolutely right. I'm going to ask Kevin in Belfast. Kevin, there is some quite strong debate going on in Northern Ireland about overturning the referendum. How do you view the Scottish situation?
Well, great to speak to you, Nigel, again. I think Nicola Sturgeon, to use Theresa May's phrase is playing politics like a game. But I do think that the Prime Minister is reacting quite sensibly to what she's done, and she's trying not to inflame Scottish nationalist opinion at the minute by triggering Article 50 too quickly. Although God knows it's taken some time.
Hasn't it? Hasn't it? Gosh.
It has indeed. And she's sticking to her original end of March deadline. But I just can't understand the Scottish nationalist opinion, the mentality behind it, because because we know now more than ever that a Scottish referendum for independence or Scottish independence would be economically disastrous. The Scottish exports to the UK are worth more than 48.5 billion. That's 4 times more than what they're worth to the EU. I also cannot understand, and we know that the oil prices are at a 3-year low. I also can't understand. Yes.
And actually, without much prospect of ever going back to $100, a barrel for the foreseeable future,
Exactly. It's. I also think that Nicola Sturgeon is duping the Scottish people, because she's using, like you said, she's using this word independence, but it's not actually independence. What she wants to do is she wants to break a 300-year bond between Scotland and England.
She's pretty shameless how she goes about it. Kevin, I thank you. I'm going to take one last call, and that's from Craig, living in the Scottish borders. Craig, tell me that Nicola Sturgeon is absolutely right to call this second referendum, and that we should delay the Brexit process because of it.
Oh, heck no.
Right, okay.
I will say this.
Yep.
You said don't be scared of Nicola Sturgeon. I kind of am. Because I'm going to tell you something. She's absolutely mad. I am fed up of seeing her on BBC Scotland every single day talking about independence this, independence that.
Yep.
And she has the audacity to go on today and go, it's not down to me. It's not down to the SNP. It's down to the Scottish people to decide Scotland's future. Well, if I remember correctly, I already voted
You
for
did.
this.
You did.
And to another one of your great points about the SNP being nothing but a racist party.
Well, I didn't quite say that, Craig, but some did. Some did, yeah.
I'll happily say it, because a lot of people don't know this about me. I'm half English.
Oh, gosh, how awful. That must be terrible.
I know, right? I know. And people actually questioned my right to vote in the independence referendum, even though I've lived here all my life.
Craig, you're a star. I'm going to have to stop you there. My final thought is please get on with it. Don't just give good speeches. Please give leadership. I'll be back tomorrow evening at 7. Who knows what will have happened?